Hi there. I'm Miss Pine, and I will be leading this professional development on the gesture mediated language learning workshop. So, first, I'm going to start out by defining GMLL. So, first, a statistic. Dr. Rutledge quoted that 70 to 93% of all communication is actually nonverbal. This is a fascinating fact. It is way higher than I thought, and probably you had thought that it would be. This actually reminds me a lot of the statistic of how many or how much of a movie emotion is determined by the music, the score that it plays. It's huge the amount of gesturing, even right now, that I'm doing with my hands to communicate what I'm saying. Um, so when you think about gesture mediation, you think about learning language by seeing the minimal gestures and then the abstract concepts that are given by your hands, your face, your stance, even just your standing is a gesture that you're conveying when you're teaching. They are movements that can convey substantial information that are not always in the speech, not always in the information coming out of your mouth. So like I could tell you that I'm feeling great today and I could have a frown on my face. So it would be showing more with the gestures, maybe crossing my arms and then giving kind of like a frown face or a standoffish face, while my mouth would be telling you that I'm having a great day. So it is actually more revealing what I'm doing than what I'm actually saying. So these concepts, they can convey emotions, like I just said. They can convey actions. So a lot of the gestures that we do, especially with L learners in our classrooms, a lot of the verbs that we are speaking, we'd like to imitate with our hands. We could show running, we could show drinking coffee. You could do any kind of action in the classroom to convey meaning. On top of that, nouns, pointing to nouns, acting out nouns, showing a square, showing any shapes or pointing to colors. Any nouns can be conveyed using certain gestures. The adjectives as well, like I said, the colors that you could point to, any kind of emotions, any kind of prompts that you're asking them to do. A prompt that was talked about in our first clip. He talked about the look, listen, and he talked about how he used the looking as pointing to his eyes, and he pointed out and he would say, look. He would cup his ears for listen. And then he would say repeat, and the repeat would be cupping his mouth and then sending it out. So the looking, just pointing at the eyes, something as simple as that, and showing that the students, even if you are a second language, you're not at all aware of any English, looking in the eyes is universal, pointing to your eyes. Listening, same with that. And then speaking, you're able to show this abstract concept by using this motion. So in one of the articles, there were several studies that were presented in this module. One of the studies had talked about the 4 different types of gestures. So one of them was relayed as a beat. One was termed iconic. One was dialectic. Sorry about the mispronunciation on that. And one was termed metamorphic. So the beat type of gesture is really what I'm doing right now. It doesn't convey any type of meaning. There are certain rhythms, beats that I'm doing with my hands that don't really have any meaning. They would kind of be meaningless to any EL learner in our classroom. This isn't conveying any kind of message. I'm just kind of talking like an Italian person, and I'm using a lot of hands. So this is called a beat gesture. The iconic gesture closely resembles a concrete object. This could be describing something. They're often adjectives. Sorry about my cold. They're often adjectives. So if you're saying tall, you could show tall. You could show short. You could show thin. You could show wide. You can show all sorts of adjectives with your hands, and those would be very concrete, iconic gestures. On top of that, the one that I cannot pronounce, detic, is pointing. So another word for that is a pointing gesture. So as simple as it sounds, if you are talking about someone, you're pointing to them. If you're talking about yourself, you're pointing at yourself. So it's very simple. It's just pointing at what you mean. And the metamorphic, these are when you're talking about more abstract concepts. So when you are doing a V, maybe for victory, and you're doing that during some kind of basketball or football game. And then if you're doing, say, the rock on symbol that I had talked about in my gestures. So those are more abstract ones that are more represented with those types of gestures. So gesture mediated language learning. It's very, very important to know, to put into practice. And I'll talk about that in a few clips. It's important for the classroom. It's important to know how it helps and how it hinders. And it's also important to know your gestures and how they're used.